No one expected anything extraordinary from her. Not anymore. Every morning she sat quietly in the same worn-out chair, her hands resting gently in her lap, eyes carrying stories no one ever asked to hear. To the world, she was just another old woman waiting for time to pass. But what people didn't know was that she had spent decades watching the world evolve, observing every innovation, every shift, every silent revolution that changed how humans lived. And one day, something inside her clicked. She realized that while the world was racing forward, millions of people like her were being left behind, ignored, underestimated, and forgotten. That's when she decided to speak. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with a calm certainty that carried more weight than any trending voice online. She began documenting 8 innovations, simple, brilliant ideas that didn't just make life easier, but restored dignity, independence, and purpose to those society had quietly sidelined. Her first revelation was about technology designed with empathy, not complexity. Devices that didn't confuse but understood. Tools that didn't overwhelm but supported. She talked about interfaces that adapted to human limitations instead of forcing humans to adapt to machines. As she spoke, her voice remained steady, but her words hit hard. She wasn't just explaining inventions, she was exposing a truth, that innovation without inclusion is incomplete. And suddenly, people started paying attention. What began as a quiet reflection was turning into something far more powerful, something that challenged how we define progress itself. The second and third innovations she revealed were even more unexpected, not because they were futuristic, but because they were so simple that people had overlooked their impact entirely. She spoke about smart living environments, homes that responded intuitively, adjusting lighting, temperature, and safety measures without requiring constant input. These weren't luxury upgrades. They were lifelines. For someone living alone, a fall detection system or voice-activated assistance could mean the difference between vulnerability and security. But what struck people the most was how she framed it, not as convenience, but as quiet protection. Then she shifted to mobility innovations, tools designed not just to move people, but to restore confidence. From lightweight assistive devices to autonomous transport solutions, She emphasized how movement is deeply tied to freedom. Without it, life shrinks. Her words carried a subtle urgency now, as if she was reminding everyone that progress should never come at the cost of humanity. As the audience leaned in, something changed. This wasn't just information anymore, it was perspective. She wasn't asking for sympathy, she was demanding awareness. And then she paused, letting silence do what words couldn't. Because sometimes the most powerful realization isn't spoken, it's felt. By the time she reached the fourth, fifth, and sixth innovations, the room had transformed. What started as passive listening had turned into deep reflection. She spoke about healthcare technologies that predicted problems before they became emergencies. Systems powered by intelligence, yet guided by compassion. Preventive care, she explained, isn't just about extending life, it's about preserving its quality. Then came social connection platforms, designed not for endless scrolling, but for meaningful interaction. Tools that helped people reconnect with family, share memories, and feel seen again. She highlighted how loneliness isn't just an emotion. It's a silent crisis that innovation can actually address if designed thoughtfully. And then she introduced adaptive learning systems, technologies that allow people to continue learning regardless of age. Because growth doesn't expire and curiosity doesn't age. Her voice softened here, almost personal, as if she was speaking from experience. And maybe she was. What made her message powerful wasn't just the ideas, it was the intention behind them. She wasn't celebrating technology, she was redefining its purpose. Not to impress, but to empower. Not to replace humans, but to support them. And slowly it became clear. This wasn't about 8 innovations. This was about changing the way we think about progress itself. When she finally spoke about the last 2 innovations, there was a quiet intensity in the air. These weren't just ideas, they were a challenge. She described purpose-driven communities, ecosystems where people of all ages contribute, share, and support each other instead of being divided by generational gaps. Spaces where experience is valued as much as innovation. Then she revealed the final piece: mindset innovation. Not a device, not a system, but a shift in how society views aging, ability, and worth. Because no technology can truly transform lives if the mindset behind it remains outdated. She looked up, her eyes steady, almost piercing, as if she was asking a question no one had the courage to answer. Why do we celebrate speed but ignore wisdom? Why do we chase the future while disconnecting from those who've already lived through it? And just like that, everything came together. The 8 innovations weren't separate. They were connected by one powerful idea: inclusion. Real progress doesn't leave people behind, it brings them forward. As she fell silent, no applause came immediately. Not because people weren't impressed, but because they were thinking. And in that moment, she had achieved something rare. Not just attention, but understanding. The kind that doesn't fade after the video ends, but stays, reshaping how you see the world long after the screen goes dark. Long after she stopped speaking, the impact of her words refused to fade. People carried them home, replayed them in their minds, and slowly began to notice something they had ignored for years: the gap between innovation and intention. It wasn't that the world lacked technology, it lacked direction. Her message had quietly shifted a question inside them, from "what's next?" to "who is it for?" And that subtle change started influencing decisions in ways no one expected. Designers began rethinking interfaces, not for efficiency alone, but for accessibility. Entrepreneurs started asking whether their products truly solved problems or simply created new dependencies. Even families began to reconsider how they interacted with the elderly, realizing that support wasn't about doing things for them, but enabling them to do things themselves. What she had done was rare. She didn't introduce something new. She revealed what had been missing all along. And in doing so, she sparked a different kind of innovation, one that doesn't rely on speed or complexity, but on understanding, the kind that listens before it builds, that observes before it acts. And perhaps that was her greatest insight of all, that the future isn't defined by how advanced our tools become, but by how deeply human they remain. Because in the end, progress isn't measured by how far we go, but by how many we bring along with us. And somewhere, in that quiet room where it all began, her empty chair now carried a presence far stronger than before. Not of a person waiting for time to pass, but of a voice that had permanently changed how time itself would be understood. And now, before you move on, take a second and ask yourself something honestly. How many times have you watched something, felt something, learned something, and then just let it fade away like it never mattered. Because this, right here, wasn't just a story, it was a shift in perspective. And perspectives like this don't come often. They don't chase you. They don't repeat themselves. And they definitely don't wait for you to be ready. So, if something inside you clicked today, if even one thought stayed with you a little longer than usual, then you already know what to do next. Not because someone told you to, but because missing out on what comes next would feel like ignoring something important. The kind of important you don't realize until it's gone. And trust me, moments like these, they don't come back twice.